In beginning this very brief report, and I'm going to set a good example for ministers who are going to speak today and tomorrow and keep to my allotted time, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we meet today. I want to mention Dick Williams, the previous president, who did a sterling job over the previous 3 years. And I want to reassure you that I'll only be talking about 3 things, because I was once told people can't remember more than 3 things in any speech. The 3 objectives I'm going to talk about, which we'll focus on over the next 12 months. Firstly, Labor's primary vote in Queensland. Secondly, the role of the trade union movement within this party. And thirdly, the state election campaign, briefly, because Evan will touch on most of that. You may or may not be aware that at the last federal election, 23.2% of voters did not vote for either the Liberal Party or the Labor Party. It's the highest vote for third parties and independents since 1934. In other words, almost 1 in 4 people walking in the gate didn't vote for us or the other lot. They chose someone else. There is some good news, of course, in that Anastasia Palaszczuk at the last state election increased our primary vote with her team from 26.6% to almost 38%. Our objective clearly has to be to get our primary vote to have a 4 in front of it. That has to be our objective, because we can't possibly hope to win elections with strong majorities and repeat those wins to give us long-term Labor governments if our primary vote is faltering. It's a problem being faced by the Liberal Party, but certainly one that we face as well. I think there are some challenges here. A week after the federal election, Evan called a meeting to begin the strategy meetings for the state election. And that's necessary, obviously. That's our aim, to actually get Labor governments in place. But it seems to me that although we need to do that, and we have excellent strategies for elections, we have to keep on honing up our strategy for the party. Why are people going to vote for us? Why us? And particularly not the third parties they're increasingly voting for. And we do face challenges as a Liberal Party do. The traditional demographics that used to vote Labor when I first joined 40 years ago are not there in the same numbers. We have a new, huge working group of independent contractors totalling 1.1 million in Australia. You see them in all your local streets. We've got to make sure that we have an agenda which suits many of those. So we do need to hone up on our strategy for the party to make it more encompassing. And that's one of the roles I'm going to play over the next little while. We are under attack, as you're aware, from the left and the right. And although Pauline Hanson and the Greens weren't mentioned specifically by either of our leaders today, obviously we need to make sure that those Labor voters who voted for the Greens or Pauline Hanson or some other third party, and there are substantial numbers of them, that they come back to their home at Labor, which obviously means, as Bill Shorten and Anastasia have said, there is little value in attacking people who vote for another party, particularly those third parties. What we have to do is give them reasons to actually return to our fold and vote for us. And essentially that message has to be, you can vote for a protest party, but you won't achieve much by doing it, apart from probably feeling good as you walk out of the polling booth. What we have to do is try and ensure that people understand that a party of reform like the Labor Party is the way to go. The third part of this question, I think, and it's something that Evan and John are right across, is the fact that we do have 2 parts to Queensland with differing issues in many cases. Some of the issues are common: integrity in government, education spending, healthcare. There are other issues which differ between South East Queensland and particularly Brisbane and the regional areas. And increasingly, I think, we have to have an agenda and we have to have policies, and this conference obviously will go some way towards doing that, to recognise that those differences do exist. And it sometimes pains me at regional conferences, for example, that we have resolutions put which portray a particular point of view, which, whilst that view might carry votes in certain parts of Queensland, would lose us votes thousands of votes in other parts of Queensland. And I think if we take account of that to a greater degree, we'll be more successful. Briefly, in terms of the trade union movement, the Murdoch press and other media outlets like to talk about the role of the union movement in the Australian Labor Party. Well, I like to talk about it as well, because you've heard some good stuff from both leaders this morning. And the question I ask myself, if we today have a party we can indeed be proud of, in government in Queensland and very close to government nationally, looking after our society, such as a civil society, having the right policies, which we do, a party which develops these policies, creates these leaders and our elected representatives with a significant input from the trade union movement. And as President of the party, I'll tell everyone, my strong view is the role of the trade union movement in this party must be maintained. It's absolutely essential. Just one little anecdote. A great favourite economist of mine, Joseph Stiglitz, a Nobel Prize winning economist, was in Australia in 2014. And he packed out the Sydney Town Hall. He's a progressive economist. And one question really has stuck in my mind since then. And the question was, what had Australia done right to defend Australians, he's an American economist, against chronic wealth inequality and the absolute poverty that exists for many people in the United States? What do we have that's different in Australia? And he had a two-word answer, and that was trade unions. He actually said we have a viable trade union movement which not only looks after its members, but has a wider societal responsibility to make sure everyone in Australia is looked after. And that's why a lot of people miss the point about the trade union movement. The trade union movement plays a very important part, not just in the interests of trade union members, but in the interests of maintaining a civil society in this country. And that's why the role of the trade union movement in the party, as I said, must be maintained. Finally, in terms of being brief, the next 12 months, I've talked already in introducing Anastasia a little bit about those 3 years when we were represented by 7, then 9 members. I'd have to say, in my experience, that period, continuing up until today, is the period of greatest unity between the trade union movement and the political wing of the Labor Party that we have ever experienced. And that tells me something. It tells me that if we maintain that as we have since the 2015 election, through to the next state election, we will win, because we will have the resources and the unity to make sure that the people of Queensland don't go back to what they experienced in the previous 3 years. So I do hope to provide a positive role as the newly elected president. I fill big shoes in Dick. I'd have to say, coming into the office and not being really involved in the office for many, many years, the Australian Labor Party state office is going very well, well organised, efficient use of resources, good leadership, and all of that hopefully will result in an election win next year in the state election. Thanks very much. I did neglect to mention, you often wonder about those who want the demise of the trade union movement, and you read this pamphlet today about what Caltex are trying to do to the NUW workers down there with a 15% pay cut. Anyone who says the trade unions have their day, just go down and have a chat to those men and women, because they understand the importance of trade unions. Thank you.